Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My Name is Dad, and this is a very special episode because if you don't know about my junior year of high school, then, man, you're in for a treat, and I tell you that right now. All right, so part 3 of Who Am I? We're going into my junior year of high school. So it's the fall of 99 going into 2000. My junior year has a lot. Let's put it that way. Okay. But I do want to start off with, I do want to kind of backtrack just a little bit. I wanted to talk about my sophomore year, which is 1999, the second half of 1999. And that was the year of the Columbine, Colorado school shooting, which basically is, is such a turning point in all of our teenagers' lives and the schools' lives, and schools having lockdowns and schools having shootings and all these things. It was that Columbine shooting was the first, and was, it was unprecedented. Like, no one have ever had that happen before. It was so crazy. It was, April 20th of 1999. And it was just so devastating. I remember my sister was a senior. I was a sophomore, and it was just crazy. But what happened, at least for us, was that was the excuse, or this was the beginning, even more. It gave even the administration of the school even more ammunition, terrible word to say, but it gave them more legitimacy to start shutting down the high school from lunches, and shutting down the dances, and shutting down the night rallies, and shutting down this and shutting down that, because, oh, look what happened in Columbine, Not that Columbine, was, is a terrible thing, and, and everything, but that was, again, as I mentioned, my freshman year, as the school started getting more politically correct, the Columbine shooting only just emphasized the administration's own beliefs on shutting down, being no fun. It's all about just academics and all that stuff. All right. So, kind of like if you think about it, if you watch the movie Dazed and Confused, where they're paddling the incoming freshmen and they're taking the freshman girls through the car wash. Oh, that shit ain't happening after Columbine. I guarantee you that right now. All right. That is not happening after Columbine. Bullying is public enemy number 1 in high schools. And, that's kind of where it goes. So even my high school, they started this new thing going into my junior year. It was called Character Counts, and you guessed it. If you could guess who was public enemy number 1, it was old good Brandon Benson here. Character Counts was some sort of big deal with the high school, but yeah, apparently I was the least characteristic person, or did not have character at all. So we'll see how that goes as we go through the year here. All right. So the summer going to junior years, 1999, 2000 school year, as I mentioned. So I got my driver's license. I got my driver's license on my birthday, June 30th. Would have been 1999. I think that would be my 16th birthday. If any of you are familiar with Kings County, California, yes, the Dragon Lady who used to give these driving tests is a real person. She really was very, very mean. And I had the Dragon Lady for my driving test. There were 2 ladies, I believe, who did the driving test. But I ended up, of course, getting the Dragon Lady on my birthday. I did the driving test, and I got I was like 80-something%, like 88% or 87, whatever. I passed. I clearly passed. But I remember when we went back and my mom was like, "So how did he do?" The Dragon Lady basically berated my mom. was like, he is so terrible and he doesn't know left-hand turns and blah, 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 blah. She was like, well, did he pass? She was like, oh yeah, he got like an 88. And my mom was like, well, so you just lectured me? You just berated me for 10 minutes here about how terrible a driver my son is, but he passed. So I got my license, that summer of 1999. And the crazy thing is I don't quite remember how I got my first car. Most people are going to remember it as the big orange truck, and that's what we're going to refer to it as the big orange truck. The big orange truck was a 1974 Chevy Silverado single cab. It was lifted about 10 inches and had 40-inch mud bugger tires on it. It was a humongous beast of a truck. It had no AC, but I don't remember how we ended up buying this truck. I remember me and my dad, we went and looked at another truck. And it was like a bluish kind of one, and it was like basically the same thing. I don't know why. I don't know if I was pushing my dad to get this kind of truck, or if my dad was like, oh, this is really cool, like you should get one of these. I don't remember. But obviously my dad was on board. So we went and looked at this one truck, and it was like, man, this truck was awesome. But it was like just very, very simple. We went and looked at this other big orange truck, and it was from the next town over, and the guy who owned it, his father owned the stereo store in the town of Visalia. So I already had like a box for like 3 12-inch subwoofers, and had this, had that, and it was, it was in really good shape. Like the guy took really good care of it because his dad has money and stuff. So whatever reason, I don't know how we got a good deal on this or whatever. My dad thought it was a good deal. We bought this big orange truck, and it was, again, 1974 Chevy Silverado single cab. It was Chevy orange. It had 40-inch mud boggers, all that stuff, tires on it. It was a beast. But the thing was, the truck was, the guy I think who had it, he had a lot of modifications on it, and then he took a lot of modifications off. So it was kind of like a stock truck in a way. So it really wasn't like super high performance or anything like that. It was more for show and all that stuff, But yeah, the big orange truck, it was definitely a big flashy truck. It got a lot of eyes. You definitely heard it coming. You definitely saw it coming. And this truck, in the end, not only started my life, but it also caused a lot of damage in my life. And we'll talk about it as we go on here. All right. So we used to take this truck. And so especially that summer, the first year I got my truck, we would take the truck over to Pismo, and, we'd let the air out of the tires, and we'd go, just driving around. You couldn't go super fast because it was old and big old tires and like stiff suspension and stuff. And so you just tried to do what you could and not break the thing. But of course I broke it many times. The 4-wheel drive went out a lot. But yeah, we drove it. It was fun. You got a lot of attention. We would take it to Pismo and drive it around and do whatever we wanted to do and have a good time. And that kind of reminds me of, that summer. I believe it was that summer was the first time I ever got pulled over in the truck. And this was me and my friends. We would go over to the local sort of Middle Eastern like liquor store kind of place where they didn't give a shit how old you were. They were just happy to sell. They're just happy to be selling liquor. But my friend over there, he would go over there and buy liquor all the time. So he was kind of like known. So I remember it was like me and him and then like 2 other friends. And this is a single cab truck. So there's only seatbelts for 3. But there were 4 of us in this truck. And we're like, okay, well, let's go over and we'll get some beer or get some booze, whatever. And then we'll go back and we're going to drink it, So on our way back to my friend's house, which wasn't really that far away, but I guess far enough. It was, I believe it was a highway patrol or sheriff. Somebody pulled me over. And we're like, oh, fuck. So when I first got my driver's license, they had a new law that you weren't, for the first 6 months you had your driver's license, you weren't supposed to it was still sort of like a learner's permit. Like you're supposed to have somebody like 18 and older, or someone who was a driver, you know, a licensed driver and all this stuff. You weren't supposed to just drive around your friends for the first 6 months. Well, obviously I didn't pay attention to that shit. And I took my friends. We drove over to the liquor store. We got some booze. We were driving back, got pulled over. And I pull over and I'm just like, oh God, this is, you know, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. So the sheriff or highway patrol, whoever it is, pulls up and, you know, knocks on the window, roll it down, registration, license, all that stuff. And he's like, you know why I pulled you over? And I'm like, I look at him. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why you pulled me over, officer. You know? And he's like, you don't know why I pulled you over? You don't know why? I can't believe you don't know why I pulled you over. I'm like, I don't know, officer. I don't know why you pulled me over. He's like, well, your tires on your truck are sticking way outside your fender wells, which was a super big deal in California. So, like, if your tires were any millimeter outside of your fender wells of your stock car, you had to have, like, fender, you had to put, like, mud flaps on and all this other shit. And it was a super big deal in California. But basically, it was just a way for police to pull you over and then try to search your car or do whatever fucking bullshit. But that was this guy's big deal. And I was like, well, oh, okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, my tires do stick out pretty far and stuff. And again, I had 6 months. I was first 6 months of my license. Not supposed to have any of my friends riding with me in the truck. There are 4 of us, and there's 3 seatbelts. We also have probably 2 12-packs or 2 18-packs of beer on the floorboard of the truck. And this guy only gives a shit about the tires sticking out beyond my fenders on my truck. So he was like, all right. So he gave me a fix-it ticket. You know, like, well, you got to go down and get mud flaps and all this. I was like, okay, officer. Look, I didn't care. I was so happy at the time that, so again, that was basically the first time I got pulled over. I definitely got a first timer's lucky break. Let's put it that way. So that was the first time I got pulled over. I'm pretty sure that was the summer of 99 going into the school year. So that would have been fall of 1999. And let's also talk about, again, this has to do with the police. Let's talk about the first time I ever got I got a ride home from police officers, or sheriffs or whoever it was. So this had to be, I believe this was around like Labor Day. So this would have been Labor Day of 1999. My parents and family were going up to Bass Lake because I mentioned that my mom's side of the family always wanted to go up to Bass Lake and have a good time up there for Labor Day. And this year, you know, because I was a junior and stuff, I had like football obligations and I had a car. So I think the plan was just that, like, I have to stay like for Friday or whatever, and then to go to football practice, and then I'm going to go up on Saturday to go up and visit my family and everything up in Bass Lake. But of course, there's no parents, all this stuff. I had football practice during the day, and I don't have to go up till tomorrow morning, so I'm going to go out on Friday night, right? So me and my friends, we're going to go out. You know, I don't even know where we're going. They're just like, oh, we heard that so-and-so's having a party at her house, so we're going to go over there. So, of course, we drive over there, and we're just hanging out. It's just like a quiet little house party, and I don't even know if I drank a beer or not. Maybe I did, but we weren't there very long, you know. So we're there just hanging out, blah, 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 talking, you know, doing normal high school party stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, someone's like, oh, there's a really big party, you know, at so-and-so's house, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. But everyone's like, I don't know. I go, what? I know where that is, you know, because this party was out in the Island District where I lived, you know? And I was like, well, I know where that is. So it was like, well, let's go. Like, okay, well, let's go then. So, of course, I get in my truck and my friends hop in and we take off. But apparently, a lot of people from this little house party followed me, which kind of drew a lot of attention, which I did not know. I did not anticipate or anything like that, but it happened. So we go to this other house party, and we're there. We're not there very long at all. I mean, I don't even know if I drink a beer or not. I mean, I drank some beer, or drink a beer, or half a beer, or something. I don't remember. Again, we weren't there very long to get drunk. Like both times, like we were not there long enough to get drunk. Like I was just hanging out, you know. And of course, the sheriff shows up, which later on I hear that it was all my fault because the sheriffs followed me because the long line of people. But again, I didn't ask anybody to follow me. I just said like, oh, I know where this place is. You guys want to go? Yeah, let's go. But of course we get there and people, you know, the sheriffs come or the police, and you know, people are like jumping the fence and people are scrambling everywhere, but everyone's just like, most of it, I'm just like, we're like, let's just hang out. We're cool. You know, like whatever's going to happen. So then the sheriffs like line everybody up, like line up everybody. And they're just like, okay, come here. And they're like, okay, you're good to go. You're good to go. You're good to go. Yep. You're good to go. Let me look at you. Okay. You're good to go. You're good to go. And they get to me and they're like, you. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, follow my finger. You know, and I'm like, okay. You know, they're like, you need to step aside over here. And then everyone else is like, oh, yeah, you're good to go. You're good to go. You're good to go. You're good to go. Well, but me? So basically, they just assumed I was drunk driving, that I was going to attempt to drive home and I'm super drunk and all this stuff or whatever. Fucking bullshit. I probably had maybe one beer the whole fucking night. But what happens is they're going to give me a ride home. And I have to call my parents and tell them that I lied to the police officers and they're going to give me a ride home. So they do. They give me a ride home and they give me a fucking big old lecture, all this bullshit. And I'm just like, you guys are so stupid. You know, this was like, I don't know why I got picked out of everybody here, but I did. But of course, then I don't know if my parents came back and came and got me, or I just drove up the next day to Bass Lake, whatever it was. I don't know. But it really wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't get in trouble. There was no ticket involved. I didn't have to go to court or nothing like that. Again, because I really did. I mean, not that I didn't do anything wrong, but it was like I wasn't that super egregious like other people, you know? It wasn't my fucking party. I didn't throw the party. I just went there, you know? Like, and, you know, so whatever. So again, I got my driver's license in my truck summer of my sophomore year, going into junior year. So obviously when school starts, you show up with a giant orange truck. It's going to draw a lot of attention. And basically this is the beginning of my new high school life, because freshman, sophomore year, I didn't have a car. My parents picked me up. My mom picked me up from school, or my sister drove me home. You know, I felt like I was a nobody, you know, and again, I now have this big orange truck. It's very flashy. It's big. I've been working out very, very hard, taking lots of creatine, lifting weights, doing all these things. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself and everything. But again, this is the time, you know, you got a new truck, you got a car, things happen for you. So, and this, not gonna lie, this big orange truck did attract the ladies. You know, it did. Again, my truck and, you know, me working out or doing whatever, I don't know. It did attract the ladies, but again, I just wasn't super involved or super aware of all that stuff. I knew what was happening, but again, it just wasn't like the highest priority for me and everything. So at some point, during the fall semester of my junior year, I got my first girlfriend, and really, again, it's not that I pursued her; she kind of pursued me, and she was like, "We're gonna be boyfriend girlfriend," and I was like, "All right, here we go," and let's just call this one. We're not gonna name names. We're gonna call her we're going to call her Miss Peacock. And all I could think of was like Clue characters. So she's Miss Peacock. And she was a nice girl. I mean, she was nice. She was like very small, petite, and all this stuff. She loved drama, obviously. And she very much cared about her popularity and all these things. But me at the time, I was still so naive. I had so inexperience with women and stuff. I didn't know. Like, I didn't know the difference. It was just like, oh, this girl really likes me and I really like girls. And yeah, this is going to be a good fit, you know? So it lasted a couple months. And, just I would spend a lot of time at her house and we'd go out and those kind of things. She had a younger brother who was really cool. He might have been like middle school age or something like that. She had a mom who was pretty crazy. In fact, she was very crazy. And then she had a dad who was in the military or was military or something, but he was never around and was kind of there, kind of not. So she definitely had some daddy issues, which is a theme that we'll discover as this episode or this podcast goes on. So kind of what happened was me and this girl, we were good. She was a girlfriend, and she was into me. Whether it was fake or not, I don't know. But what happened was I went to Glamis with my family, of course, and and Glamis is where you ride quads and dune buggies and party and do all that stuff. So when we came back, I think it was a Saturday night or something like that, which was actually New Year's Day. So the next day on that Sunday, I'm going to go visit my girlfriend, Mrs. Peacock. Okay. So I'm going to go visit Miss Peacock on January 2nd. It's a Sunday. And of course, like, why would you not want to go see your girlfriend? You haven't seen her for a couple of days, whatever. So I went and visited her, and, we were, it was like dinner time, whatever it was. And we're like, well, we're hungry. Let's just go down and get something to eat. And I think even her mom gave me some money or gave us money to like, oh, let's all go down and go, oh yeah, take your brother, just go down and get something to eat. So it was me, Miss Peacock, and her brother. We're going to go down. We're just going to drive down to Burger King, get something to eat, and no big deal, right? But she wanted to drive. She wanted to drive the big orange truck, and who wouldn't want to drive the big orange truck? So she did. So I let her drive. Again, I let her drive. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, you haven't let your grandchild drive, or you haven't let one of your kids drive down the driveway or something, like, like it says like, yeah, we'll just drive down, just drive down to Burger King and we'll get something to eat and we'll go home. But of course we pull into the parking lot and she's going to drive into the drive-thru. And I'm like, whoa. Hey. This truck don't do drive-thrus very well. Again, it's like too tall and it doesn't turn very well. So we should probably just go inside. Okay. So she backs up and boom, backs into a car. It's not hard. Just, boom, kind of backs into it. I'm like, shit, but what happens is she puts it in drive and it's like, whoa, starts taking, I'm like, what? Like, holy shit. She's like, let's just go back to my house. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. I'm panicking too. Like, I don't know what's going on. But of course, there was some sort of cop or somebody saw this thing going on and we didn't get very far. And, he lights us up, pulls us over. And of course, she's driving. So she pulls over and she hits the curb. And she kind of runs over this like newly planted little tree, probably an ash tree or something, So then she's like, well, switch places with me. Because she didn't have her driver's license because she was a year younger than me. So she had her learner's permit or something like that. I had a driver's license. It was my truck. And I was like, okay, well, like, fine, whatever. I don't really care. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Well, of course, this motherfucking cop, puts us all at gunpoint. Like, he's behind his car door. With they're like guns are drawn because we pulled over and kind of hit. And when we hit a tree, so that means that, guns are required and gunpoint is required in this situation. So, driver, throw the keys out the window. So, of course, I throw them out the window, and it's like, keep your hands out the window where we can see them. So my girlfriend and her brother are like having their hands outside the window, and I got mine outside mine. And there's like, driver, open the door. Open the door and step outside, walk backwards, put your hands over your head. And there's like, 6 or 7, 8, 10 cops on us, all with their guns drawn, giving us these orders like we're terrorists or something. Absolutely fucking bullshit. So of course they arrest me, and take me to the police station and stuff, where I find out that, lucky me, that I am the first person in Lemoore, California, to be arrested in the year 2000. Lucky me, they probably got it up on a fucking plaque or something somewhere. But, they said, and he told me that basically they had to do the whole guns drawn thing because they thought I was trying to evade them, because I hit the curb and ran over a tree, which, again, I didn't fucking do that, but I took the blame, So, of course, this all happens. And so kind of what happens is, I'm sure the statute of limitations way, way, way beyond this. So I took the blame as I did. I'm responsible. I'm the older one. I'm the dude. So my parents had a lawyer, I think a lawyer from the business or whatever. And they helped us out. And he was basically just like, yeah, let's just take the blame and the punishment, and this will all be over, and we can y'all can just kind of move on with your lives, So, I took the blame for everything, and I ended up getting 6 months informal probation. So if you don't know what that means, informal probation is basically like you have probation, but it's not necessarily court ordered, or it's not court recorded or whatever. But if you get in trouble, then it acts like, yes, you were on probation, and this is now your second offense. You know what I'm saying? But if you complete your informal probation, we'll just pretend like you never had probation, So I had informal probation, and there was a lot of things like, you could go out one night on the weekends, but you had to be home by 10. Your parents always had to know where you were, and you had to get good grades, and you had to obey your parents, and just a lot of stuff like that. But somehow, I don't know how. Somehow the Lemoore Police Department found out the real story, that I wasn't the original driver, and I took all the blame, but yet still decided to pursue extra crime. So then it was like I gave false police report to police, and my girlfriend ended up getting in trouble and these sort of things, but completely unnecessary. I mean, the guy's car got fixed. It wasn't, we paid for the tree that got ran over. I don't understand why we have to try to ruin a couple teenagers' lives, or to make it much more difficult on them. For what? I don't understand. So what happened? I got in some extra trouble because I didn't tell the police the truth, because I took the blame, because I thought I was doing a good thing, but in the end it was more detrimental to myself, because it wasn't the exact truth. But okay, whatever. So I got some extra trouble. I still had my informal probation, but I had to write a letter to the judge and explaining to her how I didn't think that I was a terrible person, and I wasn't a bad person, and what I wanted to do with my life, and all these things. And, I did all that, and I did it, and my mom looked it over, my parents looked it over, my lawyer looked it over, and they all agreed. I didn't have to do like a second draft or anything. I was just very, very honest in my letter. But I also ended up getting at least 80 hours of community service, maybe more. I don't really remember how much it was, but it was a lot. So every weekend, from that point on, I would go to community service. So every Saturday, Sunday, I would go to community service for 8 hours or however long it was. And when I first went, it was down at the county sheriff's office and everything. I went to community service, and there was just me and a bunch of other dudes. And we had our probation officer. I'm calling him probation officer. I don't know what he was. Correctional officer. I'm just calling him probation officer. But this guy absolutely 100% looked and sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he talked. He was like straight from Austria. And and we did, so basically for community service, we did a bunch of pressure washing and painting and pulling weeds and washing cars. So the first couple of days or the first couple of weekends that I did it, we did a lot of pressure washing. And man, I can't remember that probation officer's name, but what's called Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he was like he talked like Arnold, and I mean, seriously, he talked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was a big bodybuilder kind of looking guy. And I was like, holy shit, this guy, it's like the cousin of Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's how I always remember him. But we would go like to the skate park, and like we would pressure wash off the graffiti, and we would go to local businesses who had like called in, and we would pressure wash the graffiti off their building or whatever, stuff like that. And like underpasses on the freeway, we would go and pressure wash all the graffiti off. There were a couple times that we walked through downtown, like walked through all the alleys and just pulled weeds. Again, we would paint if we couldn't pressure wash. If the business didn't want us to pressure wash, we would paint over the graffiti on their building. So we didn't pressure wash, because sometimes you would pressure wash and you would still kind of see. So like if you pressure washed a penis off the side of a building, you would still kind of see the outline of a penis, on the building. So sometimes we would paint it. But I remember that I was there for a long time doing this. And, after so many weeks, all the people, when I started, all the people who were there before me were not there when I ended. And I remember that Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger probation officer was like, I became like the experienced one, where it was like, hey, Benson, we're going to go pressure wash today, and you need to show these new kids how to use the pressure washer. And I'm like, all right, here you go. When you do this, you got to do this to chug. You got to fill this up with gas. You got to pull it here, and don't put your hand at the end of the nozzle, because it'll blow a hole through your hand. And, I was almost like trusted, because I've been there so long, that Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger probation officer was like, Benson, just show him how to do it. I was like, all right, here we go, and, I totally definitely remember doing all the time. We watched, I remember we watched like the police chiefs or the sheriff, the Kings County Sheriff's like personal car. We would wash his car, do stuff like that. It was something else. I'll tell you that right now. So I did really good with my probation. I did my community service hours. I went every weekend. You were even allowed, like, if you had to miss a weekend, you just had to let them know, and you could miss a weekend. But I did my community service hours, and you want to do the crime, you got to do the time. So I did my stuff and everything. And during my probation, the probation officer. So one of the things was, if you're supposed to be home by 10, right? It doesn't matter what if it's Friday or Saturday, you're supposed to be home by 10. If they call and you're not there, something's going on. So, and they did call a couple times, and I was there. I was very, very good. Of course, my parents, threatened my probation on me a couple times. They'd be like, "You better be here, or we're going to use this against you." Like, okay, whatever. They'll probably deny all of that, but they did. But obviously, during this time, me and Miss Peacock, we were done. We weren't going to be a couple after this. Her mother fucking hated me. I was the worst person in the world, which, again, story of my life. But, she ended up dating another guy with a giant big truck to become her boyfriend. And I didn't really care, because I had all my other different problems I was going through. But, whatever. So, but the big orange truck did draw a lot of attention. Maybe because of my own fault. So I used to have stickers on it. It was like bad cop, no donut, and the little guy pissing on the Ford sign, and I eventually, we eventually had put a bunch of we had a bunch of porn magazines, and we taped a bunch of like the centerfolds and just a bunch of the pictures on the roof. On the, and inside the cabin of the truck, we would, tape them up there, and it was a lot of fun. We were just kids. We were just kids, just being stupid. We didn't care. But I eventually ended up found a new girlfriend. This would have probably been in the year 2000. So going into the summer of 2000. I think I might have still been on probation, whatever it was. So it was during the school year, but there was this new girl who had moved to school, like during winter break. And we're going to call this girl Miss Scarlett. And so Miss Scarlett moved from wherever to our school during winter break. And, she was there for a while and all this stuff. I might have had her in a class or something like that. But I never really talked to her that much. And as the school year went on, she was really good friends with one of my friend's girlfriends. So I don't know if that makes sense, but my friend had a girlfriend. His girlfriend was really good friends with this girl, but she had a boyfriend and all this stuff, whatever. I didn't care. I had my own problems. I wasn't really too worried about women at the time, but they had kind of sort of set up this thing, this like sort of date. We're going to go out, and it's just going to be us four. And I was like, okay. So we went out, and it was a good time, but nothing happened. Like we went out to dinner. I think we went out to Red Lobster or something like that. But it was like, we just went out, But then, things sort of kind of progressed with it. We talked, and, of course, she was always around because my friend's girlfriend was a friend, and all this stuff. But eventually, it just kind of got to the point where, we really did like each other. And, but she never kind of really broke up with her boyfriend, but then she did, but then kind of immediately went to me. So it made me look really bad, of course. But again, am I innocent somewhat? Like, did I know she had a boyfriend? But was I really trying to be, sneaky and take her away? No, I wasn't, but it just kind of organically sort of happened and everything. So Miss Scarlett and I eventually became boyfriend-girlfriend, and it was kind of a little bit of a big deal that she came over to me and dumped her guy and all this stuff. But I think kind of looking at the time, we kind of made it through the junior year here, and I think maybe we'll just kind of pick up from here on the next episode. We'll go through the senior year, and then we'll get beyond that after high school, all that sort of stuff. But that's a good junior year. A lot of information. First times of me and the law running into each other. But I'm probably leaving a lot of stuff out through all these episodes, but I can only remember so much in the moment and all that stuff. So again, thank you for listening to My Name is Dad. This is Who I Am. I think this is part 3, and we'll catch you on the next episode of My Name is Dad. Thanks.